So this was something put out by the Washington Post under the opinion section titled "Trump's War on Socialism Will Fail." This is an article. Now, the crazy thing is, when it comes to like different political ideologies and that, I'm fully willing to admit that I might be wrong and I might have the wrong ideology. It might be something different than what I currently believe. Like, I'll fully accept that. However, when it comes to socialism and communism, those are the two ideologies, or that group of ideologies, and I suppose fascism. But socialism's the big threat now, and I am 100% confident that that is wrong. Like, I have read way too much. I've read way too much and looked into way too much into history, economics, and all that to even give anything to socialism. Like, I know it's wrong. I know it will fail. Now, the interesting thing is actually that they put a hammer and sickle here after so many people were like, no, the USSR wasn't communism. It wasn't socialism. It was communism. And then the communists say, no, it wasn't real communism. And yet here for the picture, they did use a hammer and sickle. Now, I do fully admit that the Washington Post probably put that, not this opinion writer. Not too often. There are only some sites that let you choose your own thumbnail. Most of them, they do it for you. But this is by apparently one of the columnists there. This is from the start of the article here. We socialists are trying to save capitalism, and the damned capitalists won't let us. Political scientist Mason B. Williams cited this cheeky but accurate comment by New Deal lawyer Jerome Frank to make a point easily lost in the new war on socialism that President Trump has launched. Socialism goes back a long way in the United States, and it has taken doses of it to keep the market system alive. Now, that much is false. He's referring to the New Deal, which I actually argue that the New Deal is more fascist than socialist, and I hate when people toss around words that they don't know what they mean. Like, if I don't like something, that makes it fascism. If there's something even slightly to the left of me, it's socialist. I don't like when people do that. I wish people would use terms like appropriately and not just not waste the term on something that doesn't really count. The New Deal, I'm confident, is legitimately fascism. What is it? The government and corporations working together as in a nationalist way. It is pretty much pretty dang fascist. It's like, again, it's the government managing corporations like that, and not just in a way of like, oh, regulation here, regulation there. No, like managing pretty much, has a pretty big influence in exactly what they do. But overall, the New Deal, like, just pick up a few books on economics. There are all kinds of books out there that even specifically target the New Deal and explain why it's wrong. Like Bob Murphy has a good book on it. Excuse the title, but Politically Incorrect Guide to the Great Depression and the New Deal, as like edgy boomer conservative as that title is. It is it is a very good book. It's, as far as I can tell, entirely accurate. I've read Great Myths of the Great Depression by Lawrence Reed. That's another good one. I know I've read like 4 other books on the Great Depression, and I can't think of them right now. I'm currently reading through Rothbard's The Great Depression. That's another one. But no, there are plenty of books that go through and basically say, yeah, the New Deal was not good. Like, the New Deal actually was what made the Depression great. And one of the easiest examples, just to quickly see if I can convince you, is to bring up the Depression of 1920 to 1921. No one ever talks about that. Like, no one ever brings up that Depression, even though it started out pretty bad. Like, there was a crash in the market. And it was pretty much parallel to the crash in 1929. Or into the early Great Depression. And yet it recovered. Like, the market recovered rather quickly. It took like a year for everything to recover pretty easily, and that's because the government did pretty much nothing. It just sat back and waited, and it fixed itself. Like, that's what happens in the market. When you have a depression like that, that's a sign that there were bad investments. So what you need to do is let those bad investments fail, and then just stand back, let them fail, and the market will reorient itself into better investments. You kind of just need to let them fail. Like, when a recession happens, it's kind of like a blue screen of death for a computer. It's kind of like chemotherapy is a good analogy. Like, it's bad, it sucks, it's miserable, but that in itself, it's not the problem. It's the solution to a greater problem. Like blue screen of death. Again, like, it looks bad. It's a bad thing to happen to your computer, but not because of that, but because that's a sign of a greater problem that you need to fix. That's essentially how a recession is in an economy. It is the economy fixing itself and suffering the consequences of issues that had previously gone unnoticed. But no, so yeah, when they cite the Great Depression, or when they cite the New Deal as oh, what we need is the New Deal to save capitalism. It's not true. It's wrong. It's factually wrong. I don't have the quote I can't think of the quote off the top of my head, but I'll see if I can find it and put it in the description. But there was one of there was a official within FDR's economy. I don't know if it was his economic advisor. I can't remember. But there's a quote that goes around when later, I don't know if he wrote it in a book or if it was in a newspaper. Again, I'll try to find it, but I know it exists because I've heard it like 6 or 7 times. That he essentially said, like, if the American people knew how we were managing the economy, they would freak out because they were just like picking arbitrary numbers. They were like, should we modify this by 2% or 3 or 6%? And they're like, 4%. Why? It seems like a good number. Like, that was a lot of the economic decision making there was just like, seems like a good number. Like, whatever, sure, that's fine. There was no real logic behind it. Going back to the 19th century, Americans and Europeans, socialists and liberal reformers, worked together to humanize the system's workings and to find creative ways to solve problems capitalism alone couldn't. And honestly, I can't think of a single problem that capitalism has. Like, obviously there is the compared to what question. So is capitalism perfect? No, it has its flaws. But to say capitalism is flawed is to imply that it's flawed compared to what? Like compared to a perfect system, which does not exist. So in the end, I can't think of a single thing where capitalism is better than socialism. And I'm talking socialism, not talking social democracy. I'm not talking about what the social liberals believe or a mixed economy. I'm talking about socialism. Like, think about it. It was capitalism and greed that got rid of child labor. Like, it wasn't an active movement. It wasn't regulations. It was people being greedy and trying to make a buck that got rid of child labor. To me, that is absolutely amazing. Like, it just happened. We just produced so much wealth during the Second Industrial Revolution that child labor just went away. We were like, okay, we don't need it anymore. Put kids in school. That's where we need them. To me, that's amazing. And I'll try to leave an article in the description or I link in the description to the article that I wrote on that. Like, I went through the data. Yeah, like, child labor just kind of went away because we could finally afford to live without putting our kids to work. Like, that's how it essentially worked. It was either don't have kids or have kids and put them to work, or they would starve. That was the only thing. And thanks to industry and like all this wealth creation, we didn't have to do that. We became so wealthy that kids didn't have to work. But anyways, to continue, think about this when pondering the Green New Deal put forward last week by Senator Edward J. Markey, D. Massachusetts, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It's sweeping and adventurous. Adventurous is actually a good way to put it. Like, fascism was adventurous. The USSR was adventurous. There is virtually no way it will become law as long as Republicans control the Senate and Trump is president. And if something like it eventually does get enacted, there will be many compromises and rewrites. Now, this is the interesting thing. I think the Green New Deal is a good, valuable thing. Now, by that, I don't mean it should be passed. I don't mean it should be part of law, but it is a valuable tool because I've read through it. I read through both the FAQ on a video, again, in the description, and I read through the actual resolution. Now, the nice thing about the Green New Deal is that it is so insanely awful. Like, it is a complete dumpster fire. Like, that is the worst thing I ever read. Like, absolutely. Like, it's pretty much like worse than the Communist Manifesto, because at least the Communist Manifesto identified issues. It just misidentified them in a way and offered some pretty awful conclusions, but there was a little bit of truth to it. Like, just a smallest amount of truth to the Communist Manifesto, whereas the Green New Deal is just massively awful, and it's something that would crash our economy. I guess not. I can't say that technically because, again, it's a 10-year-long plan. It's non-binding. I get it. But if we were to go through what they said in the Green New Deal, it is talking about implementing full-blown socialism and completely eliminate, it talks about replacing the market economy with this new economy, which, it's directly calling for full-blown socialism and eliminating air travel, all air travel. And it's just, it's so insanely ridiculous that the nice thing, I trying to think of a word that conveys how awful it is, and I can't do it because it's that bad. Read it for yourself or go through the video I made on it in the description. But anyways, the nice thing about the Green New Deal is that if I see anyone supporting the Green New Deal, it means I can dismiss them right away. I can just do that because it's so insane that I know these people have no idea what they're talking about. They've either never read it or they have read it and they agree with it. It is insane. It's kind of like when someone says, I support peace, but Hitler did nothing wrong. Unironically say Hitler did nothing wrong. I can immediately dismiss them because it's okay, to support something, to make a claim like that, I can just dismiss you because you're so out of reality. But yeah, that's essentially, and I'm again there's I know there's Hitler did nothing wrong meme to be edgy in that, but I'm talking about unironic support. That's like the Green New Deal. It's just so nutty and so out of this world that there's no way it could be right. So there, done with the article. We can just dismiss them based on that. But yeah, for real to continue. But there would be no social reform ever if those seeking change were too timid to go big and allowed cries of socialism to intimidate them. Now I get it. You shouldn't be afraid of a word. Like if someone says, like if someone brings up one word like capitalism, socialism, any of that, you shouldn't be afraid. You shouldn't dismiss them right off the bat. You should really look into what they're saying. The issue is socialism is pretty dang awful, so as soon as someone brings up, oh, we can do socialism, and it's not going to be that big of a deal, I'm automatically on my guard because it's probably going to be wrong. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say maybe they don't know what socialism is, maybe they're wrong about, like maybe they don't know what they're talking about, maybe they're choosing the wrong word, but it's there's nothing redeeming about it. In his State of the Union address, Trump cast himself as Horatius at the bridge, standing against the Red Menace. We renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country. Yet in referring to new calls to adopt socialism in our country, he had a point. Open advocacy of socialism is now a normal part of our political discourse, as unfortunate as that is. Ocasio-Cortez is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and Senator Bernie Sanders won more than 12 million votes in the 2016 Democratic presidential primaries, running explicitly as a Democratic Socialist. Some recent polls even have Sanders running ahead of Trump in hypothetical 2020 matchups. What is this advertisement doing? We should be clear that Trump's words are entirely about re-election politics. He wants to tar all Democrats as socialists and then define socialism as antithetical to American values. Well, is socialism antithetical to American values? I believe so. I firmly believe so. It's collectivist. It's against meritocracy. Like hard work and labor. It's all about it's just collectivist redistribution of wealth from people that work to people that don't work. Like, I know that's a very simplistic way of putting it, but that's essentially what it is. America was founded on liberty and independence and not government coercion, domination, and control. He said, we are born free and we will stay free. I want to go back to that where he says, like, he's going to tar all Democrats as socialists. I get that. Not all Democrats are socialists. That's fine. Like, I understand that. A lot of them are, like, pretty just... they're all politicians, for one. I don't know if he's talking about Democrats as in politicians or Democrats as in people registered Democrat. But if we're talking about, like, the politicians, most of them are just corrupt. Like, they don't have any political beliefs or an ideology. They're just corrupt. And I fully believe that. Not to say that there aren't plenty of corrupt Republicans, because I also think most Republicans are corrupt. But no, as for Democrats, I think most of them are corrupt, and the few that aren't corrupt are, yes, socialists. Like, there's not too many actual classical liberals in the Democratic Party, unfortunately. And I see that as an issue. But attacking socialism isn't the cakewalk it used to be. During the Cold War, it was easy to frighten Americans with the S word because the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics offered a powerful example of the oppression that state control of all the means of production could unleash. At least they admit that the Soviet Union is socialist. And, kind of what he's saying there is it's like, yeah, it's easy to say socialism's bad when people are actively being murdered by socialists. It's like, yeah, believe it or not. The Soviet Union, however, has been dead for nearly 3 decades, as if that changes anything. China is communist on paper, but a wildly unequal crony capitalist dictatorship in practice. Now, I don't know too much about China. All I know is it's corrupt. I'd have to look into China. It's bad. It's definitely not capitalist. They call it crony capitalist, but again, find me a single capitalist, like self-identified, like laissez-faire capitalist who will support anything resembling crony capitalism. You can't. Young Americans especially are far more likely to associate socialism with generous social insurance states than with jackboots and gulags. Sweden, Norway, and Denmark are anything but frightening places. Now, what they're saying there is young Americans associate socialism with social liberalism. Now, what are they talking about? Like, social liberalism is pretty much about as far left as you can go while still saying we need capitalism, basically. Social liberal is what you find in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, like the Scandinavian countries. Or essentially, at the core, they are capitalists. They are running off of capitalism, but instead of instead of producing more wealth, they figure we'll redistribute some of the wealth at cost to economic output, and we'll have a lot of socialist-like programs overlapping capitalism. Now, I'm not a fan of the social liberal. I'm not a social liberal at all, but there is a distinction there, and I think that's important to make that distinction. They are, again, like the policies on top are resembling socialism, and those policies themselves, you could argue that they're socialist, but the economy itself is more of a mixed economy. The core of it is capitalism, and I think people just calling everything like that, oh, they have free healthcare, therefore the country is socialist, doesn't do very well, because your capitalism is what's holding that up, and if you start saying that's socialist, well, again, if capitalism is holding that up, they're going to look to that and say, oh, well, socialism clearly works. And I think that's the issue. But that's wrong. Like, socialism and social democracy are two different things. To the point where, like, social democracy, again, is still supporting capitalism, just they talk about kind of what this guy does here of fixing the problems of capitalism with a little bit of socialism. Whereas full-blown socialism is pretty dang awful and something severely different. Like, it's government controlling the means of production. The government in social liberal economies does not control the means of production. A private market does. It's just that it's heavily regulated in that sense. But yeah, to associate socialism with social liberalism is wrong. Like, I'm just going to say it's wrong. The 2018 PRRI American Values Survey offered respondents two different definitions of socialism. One described it as a system of government that provides citizens with health insurance, retirement support, and access to a free higher education. That is social liberalism. Essentially a description of social democracy. So yeah, social democrats are not socialism. Have I been saying social liberalism this whole time? I meant social democracy. The other was the full Soviet dose, a system where the government controls key parts of the economy, such as utilities, transportation, and communications industries. That's socialism. Like, remember that in social democracy there, it's a private economy, but heavily manipulated by the government. Whereas in this, like the full Soviet dose, that is what socialism is, government controlling the means of production. You might say that socialism is winning the branding war. 54% said socialism was about those public benefits, while just 43% picked the version that stressed government domination. Americans ages 18 to 29, for whom Cold War memories are dim to non-existent, were even more inclined to define socialism as social democracy. Yes, again, I meant, if I can't tell how many times I said social liberalism instead of social democracy, that's what I meant, social democracy, my fault. 58% of them picked that soft option, 38% the hard one. Oh, yes. And on those tax increases that conservatives love to hate and associate with socialism of the creeping kind, a Fox News poll last week found that 70% of Americans favored raising taxes on families with incomes over $10 million. Now, again, like, I hate how socialists are like, oh, like, look, you're conservative and you believe raising taxes on the super rich is fine. You're a conservative and yet you think Medicare Part D put in by conservatives is okay, or put in by Republicans is okay. Well, that's my issue. Like, to be perfectly honest, I don't like how far left we're moving, where even Republicans really aren't that capitalist. Like, you have people like Tucker Carlson, who I like Tucker Carlson. I think he does a lot of good work, who, as soon as it comes to, like, defending capitalism, he'll back away and say, well, no, capitalism has its issues, there's problems with capitalism. No, I think you should be strongly defending capitalism, because, to be perfectly honest, Republicans are too far left for me. Trump will still probably get some traction with his attacks on socialism, and progressives should remember that social democratic ideas associated with fairness and expanding individual freedoms to get health care and go to college, for example, are more popular than those restricting choice. And that's the big problem, to be honest. Ideas that you can explain in like 3 seconds are very popular, and you can explain social democratic ideas in like 2 seconds, and that's because there's not much of a complexity to them, to be perfectly honest. That it starts with, this seems like the nice idea, and then works from there. And believe me, like, I've met loads of socialists. I've talked with loads of socialists. Like, some of my friends are socialists, and I even ask them, like, hey, defend this for me, and they can't. Like, it's just like, this seems like a good idea. Why? It just seems like a good idea. That seems self-evident. It's like, no, you're wrong. It's like, defend your point, explain why this works. And they're like, just seems like it'll work. No. Nonetheless, Jerome Frank was right. Those slurred as socialists really do have a good track record of making capitalism work better and more justly. I mean, that's false. The S word is not now, and in its democratic forms, never should have been an obscenity. Now, this is the part where I have an article coming out on this Friday at 3 p.m. That's February 15th on Being Libertarian. If it's past that date, it's already up. The S word is not now, and its democratic forms never should have been an obscenity. So this is the guy trying to say democratic socialism and social democrats are pretty much the same. Now, I get we're literally just twisting like a word around. We're just switching around syllables in the word, but they are severely different. Democratic socialism is socialism. Like, I'm sorry, go on the Democratic Socialism America website, and when it comes to actual socialism, they're like, yeah, we're actual socialists. Like, we support actual socialism, but we want to vote for it, which, of course, you vote for socialism, and Very next election, you get dictatorships. That's just how it works. That's just like the system cannot work any other way. If you can picture it in your mind, that doesn't mean what's gonna happen in reality. But yeah, this guy is saying democratic forms of democratic socialism should not have been an obscenity. Well, democratic socialism is socialism. Like, democratic socialism is closer to the USSR than it is to Norway, Sweden, Denmark. Those countries are running off of capitalism. Remember that. They might have all kinds of socialism on top, but they are at their core capitalist. And that's something to remember. But yeah, so let me know what you think in the comments section. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more. If I missed something, you want to correct something that you think I got wrong, sure, let me know in the comments section. I'll try to remember everything I just said that I'll put in the description. And thanks for watching.